Oh, good evening, YouTube. Good evening. This is your home girl, Arabia Babo. So, should I say good morning? Because I believe it's like 12 o'clock. So, it's no longer Tuesday, it's Wednesday morning. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning, YouTube. Good morning. I hope everyone is enjoying their week, the festivities that's getting ready to come up for this holiday season. And I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I don't celebrate Christmas, but I acknowledge both holidays. But I hope everyone enjoys their holiday weekend. And it's going to be a long weekend, especially for people that don't acknowledge certain holidays or different days. But I hope everyone enjoys. I hope you have fun with your family and friends. I hope that those of you that are going to be participating in the Black Friday shopping, be safe. Be safe. Be aware of your surroundings. If you're going out to shop, for some people they shop online, so hopefully many of you will be doing that.
Power off.
Yeah. So, oh, thank you for wishing me happy holidays, and I wish the same for you. Very thoughtful of you. Thank you. Yeah, but I'm not really up here to talk about Thanksgiving and Christmas because I see all over these YouTube streets that they're talking about the Susan Smith situation. She was denied parole a few days ago after doing 30 years in prison. And I did time with this girl. I met Susan Smith at the Women's Center. Now, around the time I met her, she was not, she didn't have a girlfriend at the time. She wasn't messing with any correctional officers at the time. But what I want everyone to know about those correctional officers that she was sexually involved with, I want to let everyone know that those correctional officers are not angels. They're not innocent in any way. Both of them have conducted past relationships with other different inmates. And the only reason why Susan Smith got caught up in the sexual stuff with the correctional officers because they was conducting an investigation on the sex activities that was going on in the prison system, not only at the women's center but at least correctional, at any prison that the women were at. A shout out to the chat. I want that understood. Even though Susan Smith did not make parole, she was not granted parole this time. It's going to be a time they're going to let her out. I've seen them do it before and they will do it again. Now, when I was in prison, I went up for parole every year. I was never granted parole. I had to max out my sentence. I only had an 8-year sentence. I did 6 years, 7 months. But one thing I do remember about Susan Smith, when she first arrived to the Women's Center and stepped foot on the compound, there was 5 black female inmates that physically assaulted her on the yard. What did they do to those inmates? They ended up putting them on lockup for a long period of time. I believe those women stayed on that lockup unit for 6 months for attacking Susan Smith. Anytime any story came up on those television sets talking about Susan Smith, the television would immediately be turned off. The prison officials at that particular time that was running the Women's Center right there on Broad River Road in Columbia, South Carolina, those that ran that prison did everything they could to protect Susan Smith from physical assaults. They couldn't stop everything because Susan Smith ended up doing other things different times, different rule violations. So this is understood. A shout out to the chat. I want to thank everyone that's coming into the chat, that's listening to what I'm talking about real quick. I want to thank you for coming in. I did time in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. My inmate number is 221644. I was convicted of my crime, which was common law robbery. My judge was Judge Schuler. I was convicted of my crime in 1995. I was shipped to the Women's Center, to the receiving unit in 1995, September of 1995. I did not get out of prison until October the 1st, 2001. But I didn't do all my time at the Women's Center. They shipped me to Leith Correctional. And then just before I was getting ready to max out, they shipped me back to the Women's Center because there was some difficulties between me and some other inmates. You know what I mean? One of the inmates I was having some issues with, she went to the administration and had separation papers done. You know what I mean? Because me and her was fighting over another female. See, that's what happens in fucking prison. You fight over females. Yeah, man. But I'm going to tell you something about Susan Smith. As I remember her, now, when you're in prison, you're going to have a job. They assign you some kind of work assignment. And her assignment was to work in the school building and be a substitute teacher. And her job was to help other inmates get their GED. That was her job. And she did a very good job at that. She's very good at arts and crafts. I remember her being very quiet, being very withdrawn. She always sat by herself. I don't remember the other inmates really associating too much with her unless they wanted something from her. And she was a woman that liked to do arts and crafts. She was a woman that liked to knit, that liked to crochet. She liked to needlepoint. She liked to cross stitch. She liked to make those little arts and crafts projects. And, you know, she would get together with some of the other females and, you know, and they would complete those arts and crafts and they would make money off of what they did. Now that's an honest way of making money while you're in, you know, in prison, to hustle your talents. I don't remember her being a troublemaker. I don't really remember her speaking above a whisper. Only thing I remember, she used to always sit by herself. If the yard was open, she would always sit on a blanket, and Hope, who was the prison cat, would come sit there with Susan. She would eat Susan's food and listen to the radio. Because Susan Smith used to put the little headphones on Hope's little ears, and Hope would be sleep on the blanket. And they would stay there for a little while, and then Susan would get tired, and then she would get up, collect her things, and then she would walk back to her building. At that particular time, Susan Smith lived on Cottage 4. And Cottage 4 was assigned to inmates that had mental health issues. It was Cottage 4, Cottage 2, and Cottage 6. Those are the 3 cottages I remember that was designated for people who had mental health issues or they lived on certain levels, mostly closed custody. Now, I remember being there at the Women's Center. I remember one particular afternoon, they had opened the yard. And I remember them making the announcement. The yard is now open. The yard is now open. So all the inmates would come out. They would sit outside. They would play their cards. They would play their music. They would walk around in a circle with each other. And I remember it was getting later and later and later. They didn't close that yard until after 10 o'clock that evening, that particular night. And I was like, and I asked my girlfriend, Marisol, I said, Marisol, what's happening? How come they didn't close the yard earlier? She said, Arabia, Susan Smith is doing what she needs to do with Captain Rowe. See, Captain Rowe, he came on the fucking television not too long ago telling the whole world that Susan Smith don't need to be released. Why is that, Captain Rowe? When you fucked that woman sexually, you and that other officer, the other officer that was found guilty of having sexual relations with Susan Smith was married to another woman that he had met a few years ago, and she was an inmate. So that particular guard dealt with only inmates. He was married to a woman he met while she was doing time. He was cheating on his wife and going with Susan Smith. When the wife found out about it, she was like, she didn't doubt that her husband was fucking with Susan Smith. Captain Rowe is no angel. He knew exactly what the fuck he was doing. He just is upset that he got caught. Because when you get caught up with having sexual relations with an inmate, you lose your pension. You lose whatever benefits coming from being a correctional officer. My sister-in-law, Sergeant Crystal Reagan, rest in peace, baby girl. That was her mistake. She was a correctional officer. She met someone while she was working at the prison. The woman is dead now because she married somebody that was a convicted killer. Susan Smith is accused of murdering her 2 sons. Yes. She was convicted. Yes. She did 30 years. Yes. She has done other things in prison that they say are prison violations, but nobody in there is a fucking angel. The whole system is corrupt. The parole board, they denied her parole this year, but don't worry, She's got plenty of time to catch parole. And I've seen them do it. I've seen them give parole to lifers. People like me that serving 8 years on my little crime, I never was granted parole. I had to max out. But I didn't have a life sentence. I didn't have long term. Susan Smith is going to end up being released. Is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing? Not. I'm going to tell you what they're going to do. When they do release on parole, it's going to be a few years down the road. They're going to have her on house arrest. Okay? They're going to make it that she'll be able to work and pay her parole fees and visit her parole officer and attend her meetings for therapy and everything when she gets out. She is going to get out. I don't believe Susan Smith is going to die in prison. I don't believe that at all. But I just want it to be known that the Department of Correction, especially the South Carolina Department of Correction, is filled with corruption. They have not fixed anything about that prison system. And the way they treat the inmates is terrible. It's awful. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I had to do time there, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I wouldn't. Not at all. And I know that there's going to be a day where they are going to release Susan Smith. I've seen them do it before. I've seen a few people get out. I remember a few years ago, I met this woman named Granny. Granny was serving a life sentence. She had killed someone. She was serving life. She did most of her time at Leith Correctional. When Granny was younger, Granny had attempted escape while she was at the Women's Center. When they caught up to Granny and Granny's girlfriend, they put them on lockup for a couple of years before they released them back onto the compound. The other woman, she ended up maxing out. Granny, she had a life sentence, but Granny ended up getting paroled. I know a few people that have been convicted of murder. A murderer would get parole quicker than someone that wrote checks, someone that is a shoplifter, someone that is convicted of robbery. A murderer would get paroled quicker than someone that committed some kind of other crimes. So it is going to come a day where they will release Susan Smith. And I can't really judge her and say, oh, she's a terrible person. I never had any problems from her. No one that I know had ever had any issues with her. Susan Smith is 53 years old. By the time she do get parole, I bet you, I might be wrong, she might end up making parole just before her 60th birthday. And they will have her on house arrest. And they will make her pay large fees to the parole officer. They are thinking of ways on how to make money off of Susan Smith. That is what they are thinking about. They don't care about society. They don't care about a public safety. And it's not like she's Charles Manson. It's not like she's Dylan Roof or anybody like that. But the only thing that really stands out in my mind, after she committed the crime, she strapped her. Well, okay, she had her two sons strapped in that car. That was an awful, terrible thing that she did. And I remember her when she was in prison. She used to walk around with a little Bible, and it had their picture in that Bible. She didn't seem like she was happy. She didn't seem like she was enjoying herself. She didn't seem like she was kicking up her heels and doing her thing. And then they talked about the fact that she has plenty of men that write into her, that write to her. They're pen pals with her. They send her money. They take care of Susan Smith. So it's not like she's hurting for anything. And the last infraction she got, I don't even know how she could have got something like that. Being convicted of, inside conviction of being found guilty. And when usually they look for things. She might have been writing to the person or whatever the case might have been, and that person might have put money in her book, on her books. And people don't take Susan Smith serious. So whatever was going on, whatever situation, whatever rule infraction, it was something stupid. She ended up losing her canteen privileges for 90 days, her tablet privilege for 90 days. 90 days is 3 months. After you do the 3 months, then they work. 9 times out of 10, Susan Smith is probably a closed custody inmate. So she's only spending $10 a week. If she's not on closed custody, she's spending a little bit more money. If she's on M custody, which is medium custody, that's $20 a week. I custody, that's $75 a week. You know what I mean? I don't care what she spends while she's in there. I know she's not having a good time. I know she's not kicking up her heels. I know she's not she's not living her best life. I'm gonna put it like that. She's not living her best life. She's not comfortable in any way. There is no privacy in there. Shout out to the chat. But I want to thank everyone for coming in. I want to wish everyone happy holidays. Hope everyone has an awesome week and weekend coming up. Because I don't celebrate these holidays. These holidays feel different to me. It's feeling different to me. Okay. So I'm out of here. Hope everyone has an awesome day. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy your friends and family. It is what it is. One, peace.